1.6 gets into two different types of inequality problems. The first part is solving compound inequalities. Today we're just going to focus mostly on the graphs of compound inequalities, mainly because the solving is the same and I want to make sure that your time is not wasted doing that. Now, if you're having issues solving inequalities in general, make sure you try to take care of that. Talk to me. Do what you need to. Pretty much your ability to do these types of problems, which would be compound inequalities, will improve as you're able to solve inequalities in general. Typically the issue with solving inequalities is the graphing of it, but either way, there's two types of compound inequalities. One is and one is or. And inequalities typically shade between the values. And again, you kind of want to probably make that mental note and make sure you memorize it, because that's usually what happens. What happens is, in a situation where you have a connected equation, there's actually two of these things put together. So in other words, you have 17 is less than 3x minus 4. You also have 3x minus 4 is less than or equal to 26. Because this is all equalities or balanced, I still solve the same way as I would, which is I add 4. But instead of doing it twice, I've got to make sure I do it 3 times. So 17 plus 4 becomes 21. Copy the sign. 3x comes down. Copy the sign. 26 plus 4 is 30. And then the last thing I do is say, hey, in order to get x by itself, I have to divide by 3. So again, I do that 3 times. 21 divided by 3 is 7. Bring down your x. Copy the sign. And 30 divided by 3 is 10. When you go to graph this, first off, the reason why you know it has to shade in between is because notice that x is in between two numbers. And so therefore, it's just going to be a graph where you put anytime you do that, it's always smaller number first, bigger number second. Copy the sign for 7, which is an open circle. Do the sign for 10, which is a closed circle. And again, x is between 7 and 10, so it's going to fit there. This could also be split. It could be stated in a way. This could be stated in a way where it says x is greater than 7 and x is less than or equal to 10. But again, the word and means it's probably going to be in the middle. But notice that x is greater than 7 points to the right. X is less than 10 goes to the left. And means that both of these things need to be true. So if you're doing this the old-fashioned way, you would imagine if 7 is going this way, because it would go forever that way, and 10 is going that way, the only spot where these two things overlap is in between. But again, and the only spot they overlap is in the middle, which is what we end up with here. All right, so and means both of them have to be true. So for example, you have to be 16 and a female to attend this birthday party, whatever it might be. And means you have to be both. So if you're not 16, it doesn't work. If you're not a female, it doesn't work. So and means, again, both of them have to be true. And you have to be careful, because there are times when it'll say something like this: x is less than 7 and x is greater than 10. And when you look at those two things, and again, if you ever see it and it doesn't make sense, this is why. Less than 7 means it'd be going this way. Less than 10 means it's going this way. Do these two overlap at all? No. And so that would be no solution. So you need to be careful again about checking that out. That's what your homework is going to pretty much expect of you at some point to be able to do. Or inequalities typically shade outside the values. I think about an oar as a boat. So whenever you're sitting on a boat, I'm sorry, this is a terrible boat, but this is the front of the boat, and you typically have an oar on this side that you row with, and a oar on this side that you row with. And that's how I think about oar. It's this and this. So it's the outside parts while you yourself, excuse my terrible art, while you yourself are rowing, these are your oars. But if we look at this, oar typically is set up, and actually has to be set up as separate parts because they're two separate graphs typically. But when you graph it, or when you solve it, you just solve each one by itself. So this ends up being k is greater than or equal to 14 over 3. And then when you come over here and solve it, you end up with k is less than negative 10. Again, copying that or, smaller number on the left, which is your negative 10, 14 over 3 on the right. And then check it out, 14 over 3 is closed, pointing to the right. Negative 10 is open, pointing to the left. Or means both of them can be, you accept both of them. If you have to be 16 and female, then you have to be both to get into the party. If you have to be 16 or female, then 16-year-olds can make it, or females can make it. So an 18-year-old female can go because she's a female. A 16-year-old male can go because he's 16. That's the power of or, and that's why or allows both of these, which is why it typically is the outside part. As I said, the oars on a boat is usually what you're going to see. Now, or also can be tricky because you could have x is greater than 1 or x is greater than, let's say, 6, to where whenever you do that, and again, these are the concept questions. This isn't typically on your test, but it's things you need to know. If x is greater than 1, that means it goes from 1 all the way across. If x is greater than 6, that means it goes from 6 all the way across. This is tricky here. If this was an and, you'd want where they overlap, so it'd be 6 and bigger. But because it's or, you actually would just go ahead and do everything that it covers. But again, if that pops up, just come back and ask me, and we'll discuss it as we work through your stuff. There is one tricky problem that textbooks like to place in the work, but typically not in the example, and it's this one. And the issue with this is the steps that we did earlier, because this is a grouped up inequality, is that how do I get in here if subtracting n moves this, turns this into 1, but then I get negative 3 minus n? Well, the best way to do it if this gets too complex is just go back to the basics, which is, remember that this is two equations. One of them is n plus 6 is greater than 2n plus 5. The other one is, and remember that's an and because these two things are connected, 2n plus 5 is greater than negative 3. And once you do that, it gets a lot easier because now you understand you have the power to do everything you need to do. Equals n, sorry, plus 5, then you subtract your 5, getting 1. Again, flipping that around because I don't like n on the wrong side, so flip the sign, flip the 1, there we go. Here, subtract 5, subtract 5. And now, because this is an and, we know we want the overlap, so we put the smaller number on the left, we put the bigger number on the right. Notice that my right number is pointing here, my smaller number is pointing here, which means we should be good in terms of having the middle. Again, 4 is pointing to the right, which is right. 1 is pointing to the left, which is right, and that would be it. Just again, make sure you're asking about help on this stuff. There is one more section. I'll probably put it up Friday after your quiz. Don't forget, next week, you want to be working on a 90% on all of your homework. So if you don't have all of your homework up to a 90%, make sure you talk to me. If there were problems that I was supposed to fix that I did not fix, make sure you email me. And all you have to do is email me and say it's 1.1 number 6 so that I know what to look at. Telling me to go back and fix it means I have to remember what you told me to fix. But if you are specific and say, hey, 1.1 number 6, that's all I need to do, and then I go to your Math Excel, I find 1.1, I look at number 6, I make sure that it makes sense that it was something I told you that I'd give you credit for, and I give you credit for it. But just check your homework. If you're trying to get that extra credit for next week, check your homework and make sure that that all your homework is up to 90% or higher. It doesn't have to be 100, but 90 or higher, then we'll open up the extra credit assignments. Or next week will just be a week where you actually get caught up. So just again, make sure you're working to get to where you need to be. And outside of that, I will talk to you later. Good luck.